Super Rugby Pacific is underway. Waratahs and Drua played the first game of the 2022 season, the first game ever for Super Rugby Pacific, first game ever for the Fijian Drua. It ends up being a 40 points to 10 win to the Tars, first win for them in over a year after going through a full season last year without managing to crack onto a win. It's after midnight here, folks. I'm going to go to bed shortly, but before that we will go through some of the key events, the stats and whatnot from this game, which was the Waratahs and the Drua, the opening game of the 2022 season. It's good to be back watching Super Rugby. It's good to be watching rugby with a beer instead of a coffee because it's on at night instead of the morning. So yes, this part of the world is back in rugby season. Happy days, forgive me for being just a touch excited about that fact. This game, I think, boils down to the fact that the Drua are a new team. I mean, the Tars are obviously got a new coach, so it's maybe one where we're still a little bit unsure where the Tars are at, in that were the Drua bad, and that were the Drua terrible, and that a bad Tars side was able to beat them, and the Tars will then go on to resume their fortunes of last year and get beaten by the other Aussie teams, or have the Waratahs taken a step up from last year and the Drua just not quite there yet. I think my heart leans more towards that one, and that the Waratahs aren't going to be the side they were last year. I think they will be improved. And the Drua, like I mentioned, as I was starting to mention, they showed all the signs of a telltale team, which is just starting on. Some of the handling wasn't there. Some of the penalties early were kind of a bit soft. But through the course of the game, I think we could see them improving. They finished the stronger of the two sides, albeit, they still got beaten by 30 points. So I'm also kind of equally chuffed to see the Tars back to, getting back to at least where we think they can be, rather than just kind of losing week in, week out. The Tars showed them a bit of respect early, to be fair. They opted for 3 early, and they ended up kicking 3 penalties in this game. They got the first try of the game through Harris. That one was just them kind of building phases. So 10-0 early lead to the Tars was kind of a bit of a settler, because if the Drua had scored first, at home the Tars may have been a bit rattled, but not to be. The Drua did get their first ever points through the boot of former Bluesman Baden Kerr. He kicked a pretty good looking penalty from a scrum penalty, I think it was. Although the Drua had been a wee bit guilty of some handling errors prior to that, so I can kind of see why they opted for the 3. That being said, they conceded one pretty much straight after, so 16-3 to the Tars after 22 minutes. So it was a little bit of a frustrating watch early for the Drua, because you could see they were trying to kind of build, but they, at no point, I don't think they really ever went through kind of 5+ phases. It just wasn't happening for them kind of early on. They did have a period of pressure and then would lose the line out. Then they would, just give away a penalty. So, it was a little bit, as I said, a little bit frustrating, but not unexpected, I think. As I said, new team. Things are going to take a while to click. But that being said, the Tars, they clicked. Porecki, the hooker, he got a try in 35 minutes. So, Maul is often an area where we see teams which have got more experience, or a Tier 1 up against a Tier 2 team, tend to dominate, and that's how it looked like it was going to be. That being said, even the Maul, I think, got better for the Drua throughout the game. So, 21 points to 3. Drua have a chance before half-time, but the line-out's not straight. Loads of errors that I think will be fixed come future games, but weren't quite happening in the first half of this one. Half-time, the stats are pretty telling. The Tars have had 58% possession. They've had 51% territory. They've had almost double the run meters, 189 to 109. The Drua's line-out is 6 out of 10, which ain't great. And the Tars are, I think, 7 from 8. Turnovers conceded total is 7 to 2, with the Drua having 7. So they've had less ball, but they've coughed up, more than 3 times the turnovers. So the first half, to put it mildly, was pretty scrappy from the Drua. Second half, as I said, you can see them kind of starting to improve into the game, but not early because the Tars hit real fast through Foketi in the second half, pretty much from the restart. They gather the restart, the Tars. We've seen a few tries scored in the Six Nations last weekend from teams able to gather their restarts. It is like the next set piece, right? After scrums and lineouts and whatnot, all that stuff they need to practice. Restarts are brutal if you don't get them right. The Drua didn't get that one right, but credit to the Tars for getting it. They go through some phases, wide ball, and then Foketi goes over, so 26-3. The Drua get a yellow card, which is kind of a silly tip. Clean out, which is not a good look. To be fair, they looked like they've been a knock-on in the build-up, so why the game was going long enough to have a tip from one of the Drua guys was unfortunate. But the Tars don't really capitalise. They don't kind of get that... they do get one through Bell, but it took more than 5 minutes for them to really get much go forward in the yellow card. They weren't quite that clinical, but they go through some phases, and eventually Bell goes over. So it's 33-3. And at 33-3, it's starting to tick for the Waratahs, and then Gordon gets an intercept try in 57 minutes. So it's 40 points, and you're not even at 60 minutes yet. You're thinking, this could be 50, this could be 60, right? This could get really messy, but that's it in terms of scoring for the Tars. And as I said, it was an intercept, so here's where the Drua, I think, this is one game, so maybe I'm being a bit too optimistic, but I think the Drua are really starting to build from here. They maul it up, but they get turned over at maul time. They get a scrum penalty, they get a second chance. Eventually, Ngutha, the captain, the number 8, he goes over for the first try in their history, so it's good to see, a Fiji internationally capped player, the captain, go over for the first try of them in their history. So fantastic stuff for him. Congratulations for him and his family. But maybe a hint of a double movement, but I don't think so. I know Tars fans will probably call it a double movement, but it seemed like he went to the deck and then had that one kind of movement to put it over the line rather than, squirming along the ground, propelling himself forward off his legs. So, and there were handbags. And I forgot to mention, there were handbags multiple times in this game. Both sides, I think, will be looking at that because if you're going to get rattled, you're going to give away a silly penalty. So that's an area where both sides don't need to be doing the old handbags thing. Maybe, tensions are a bit higher because it's their first game and they're looking at their first win in like 400 plus days. So, yeah, maybe that's just tensions being a wee bit high. First game of the season, everyone's a bit kind of hyped up maybe. The Tars do get a yellow card towards the death. They were giving away a ton of penalties at the end. The Drua were knocking on the door for ages, looked like they might score. It looked like the Tars might even get a second yellow card, but eventually the Drua get held up, and that means the end of the game. They had advantage and then tapped it straight away, but got held up. So, yeah, no second kind of consolation try for the Drua. It's a bonus point win for the Tars. Like I mentioned, first win in a long time for them, so much needed one. But yeah, I'm not really too sure where these teams are at just yet, because as I said, we don't know where the Tars are at in comparison to last year. I do feel pretty confident saying we will see the Drua reduce the errors they had in this game, and they will be a better team throughout the season. So, that's the same thing which is true of most teams from their first game throughout the season, right? They shake off the rust, but I think especially for the Drua, because this is their first game, they've had preseason, but first real game in anger to kind of come together as a side. So pretty confident in that fact. Final stats: run meters 375 to 241, so the Tars dominate that. But interestingly, possession finishes 49-51. Remember, it was like 58 to the Tars in the first half, so the Drua really evened it up in the second half. Territory, the Drua finished 58-42, so they really did have some good chances in that second half, just lacking that clinical edge. Defenders beaten is 20-16 in favour of the Drua. Clean breaks, though, is 3-zip in favour of the Tars. Remember, I think a couple of those, Jake Gordon especially, won the old the intercept. Tackles, the Tars make 141 to the Drua's 97, so the Tars a bit guilty defensively last year of being soft, maybe hardened that up a little bit in this effort. They tackle 88%. The Drua are at 86. Penalties conceded 19-12. That's the Tars having more. Remember, they also have a yellow card each. But yeah, interesting times. The fact that the Tars were giving away so many penalties and having to make so many tackles towards the end of the game. Turnovers conceded, like I mentioned, is a killer, 19-7. That's a brutal one for the Drua, and I honestly think that one is easy fix number one. That's going to come with game time and experience, and just a bit of kind of a settling in time. Interestingly, the individuals, Gordon, the halfback, the captain for the Tars, 106 run meters, a lot of those from the intercept, but 2 clean breaks, 4 defenders beaten. He's also the top tackler with 15 from 16. The lock, Cridge, makes 12 from 12. Right winger Ratu makes 46 run meters and 4 defenders beaten. His whole team makes 20 defenders beaten, so for him to have 4, it's a pretty good shift. The flanker Salawa has 13 from 14 tackles, which is a pretty solid shift as well. I think he's the top tackler for the Drua. Interestingly, also, kicks from hand is 19-9. So not a lot of kicking from the Drua. It's pretty rare that we see teams kick fewer than 15 times a game. Teams can kick 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 times a game. So 19 is not that high for the Tars, but 9 is very low for the Drua. So, interesting times. You guys let me know your thoughts. That's the start of Super Rugby for 2022. We will see how the competition goes. We've got a couple of games on in New Zealand tomorrow, which is already today because it's after midnight. And one of the games from Australia plus one on Sunday. But you guys let me know what you think. Do you think this is a really bad start for the Drua, losing to a team which couldn't buy a win last year in the Tars? Or do you think the Tars are maybe going to be resurgent under their new coach and that the Drua just need to kind of find their feet? Maybe it's somewhere in the middle of the two. Anyway, I'm off to bed. You guys let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you again soon. See you later.